G'day guys, and welcome back to Ados the Great YouTube channel. So guys, in today's video, I'll be going through all my 2024 Dally M predictions. So we're going to start off with Rookie of the Year, move on to the hard-earned player, do the captain, the coach, then I'll name my team of the year, and I'll give you my Dally M Player of the Year. Now, I'm not going to include the women's in this one. I'll probably do a separate one for that, hopefully, if time permits. But, yeah, we're going to jump in and dive straight into it. So, without further ado, the first award for 2024 in my prediction, the Dally M Rookie of the Year, will go to Kale Iro. Now, personally, I think Lockie Galvin deserves it. And it's kind of crap that, he can't win it because he's been suspended for, a minor issue. Like, I don't think, unless you do something crazy, I don't think in-game suspensions should really count towards this award or any award, to be honest. I think, if it's something to do outside of footy, then absolutely. But I think it'll be a bit hard done by here. But yeah, I think Kale Iro is going to win the Rookie of the Year for 2024. A couple of other names that could come up: Jack Bostock from the Dolphins, Ethan Strange from the Raiders. Outside of that, I think Kale Iro is pretty much locked in for this one. But you never know. Anybody, another name could come up and take it off him. But I think outside of Lockie Galvin, the next best player was Kale Iro. All right, the VB hard-earned player. Some names that I've got in my list is Joe Tapine. Obviously, Adam Fanua-Blake always makes it. Isaiah Yeo is a good shout as well. And I think those three players will go very close to win it. But I'm going another Warrior, and that is Mitch Barnett. I think Mitch is... he's had a massive year, obviously playing State of Origin this year as well. Did a really good job for New South Wales also. And the Warriors, he's really helped lead them from the front with Adam Fanua-Blake. And I think that, he will win the VB Hard-Earned Player of the Year. All right, quickly moving on to the next one. This one is going to be the Captain of the Year. Now, obviously, you've got a few players that could win this one. Nathan Cleary, Isaiah Yeo up there. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Yeo is the captain and Cleary's sort of like a leader. I don't know if they're co-captains or anything. I'm not too sure about that. But yeah, outside of that, James Tedesco is always a good shout. Darley Cherry Evans. There's several players that could get it, but I personally think that the race is pretty much over, and it was over when this team got locked into the finals. I think Stephen Crichton from the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs has pretty much locked up the Captain of the Year. I'd be very surprised if anybody wins it over him. I think he's pretty much locked in for that one. All right, next up, we've got the Coach of the Year, and I'm going a bit left field here now. I see so many people saying Shane Flanagan, obviously Cameron Ciraldo, massive shout and probably will win it. And obviously Shane Flanagan's, a lot of people thought the Dragons would get the spoon. They nearly made finals, same with the Raiders, so Ricky Stewart is a good shout as well. I don't think it's left field. I think this one's pretty straightforward, but if you want to go Cameron Ciraldo, or if they do go Cameron Ciraldo, I can see the argument for it. But I'm going Craig Bellamy. I think Craig, what he's done this season and what he does every year realistically, I feel like it gets swept under the rug because we know what Craig Bellamy does. We know how good of a coach he is. But I tell you what, man, the injuries that he has had this year to players like Nelson Asofa-Solomona, obviously Cam Muntz has been out for a long period, Xavier Coates, there's been players, Harry Grant's missed footy, so has Jerome Hughes as well, and players like Tyron Wishart, Jack Howarth, Grant Anderson, they've all stepped up and played a massive role for the Storm. So I think it just goes to show how great Craig Bellamy is, and he is my Coach of the Year for 2024. All right, next up, I'm going through my Team of the Year. So I will go through fullback to lock. Now, silly me, didn't actually I did do up an image for the wingers. I don't know where the hell it's gone, so I'm just going to announce my wingers, and we'll move on after that. So my fullback of the year, obviously there are several good options here. Dylan Edwards, Tom Trbojevic is a good shout. Kalen Ponga, there's quite a few you could go through and pick. A few smokies, I guess you could say. Keano Kini, don't know if he's played enough games to warrant him getting selected, but he's had a very good year. So is Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow. My fullback of the year, and I think he will be up there in Dally M counts and could win the Dally M. We'll get to my Dally M player of the year at the end of this video, though, is James Tedesco. So James Tedesco is my fullback of the year. I just think, he's going to poll a lot of Dally M points. And while, Dylan Edwards took his jersey for Origin, I still think James Tedesco is one of the best fullbacks in the game. So I've got to go Teddy there. My wingers, obviously not going to put up the little picture here, but my wingers of the year. Look, I originally had Jacob Kiraz as one of the wingers, but I don't feel like he'll get it. Now, I feel like he deserves to get it, but I don't see him getting it. Outside of that, I think it's a two-horse race. Outside of Jacob Kiraz, and one of my wingers is going to be Brian To'o, and the other one, Zach Lomax. Those two, they've been very consistent all year. Obviously,
turns out I actually did do one,
well, which I do think helps their case a bit. Personally, I would probably have Kiraz over Lomax because, Brian To'o, he's a 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10 every single week, whereas I think, Lomax, he'll give you an 8 to 9 most weeks. But then he has a 6 or a 5 in him occasionally as well. So I just think Brian To'o is a little bit more consistent than Lomax. So Brian To'o and Lomax are my wingers of the year. All right, on to the centres of the year. This one's another one that's relatively close. I think Joey Manu deserves a shout. Valentine Holmes is normally there and thereabouts. I don't think he's had a great year this year, though. Normally, Campbell Graham would be in the conversation. Unfortunately, he has been injured all year. So I think that this realistically leaves only two, potential options. Obviously, another good shout that nobody really talks about, Moses Sully, definitely deserves a shout as well. But my centres of the year will go to Jesse Ramian from the Sharks and Stephen Crichton from the Bulldogs. I think that they are pretty much locked in for centres of the year. If you disagree, absolutely fine. Bradman Best is another good shout as well. Dane Gagai is up there also, but I just think these two, they're incredible players, and I think Stephen Crichton, he's my captain of the year, obviously. I think he deserves to go straight into centres of the year. And then Jesse Ramian, look, if you do have another option, please do let me know in the comments. But I am locking him in for my centre of the year. All right, 5'8". This one was tough because there are several options you could go with. Obviously, a player like Matt Burton is a good shout. Jerome Luai. However, I do think he's probably played a little bit too much halfback this year. So that's why I've sort of ruled him out. You've also got... Who else have we got there? Obviously, Lockie Galvin is another good shout, but can't win it, which I think is ridiculous. Tyron Wishart, if he played longer, I think he's a shoo-in for this one as well. But for me, I think you got to go Tommy Dearden. I think Dearden, he's had a really good season this year. He played Origin for Queensland, and while they didn't win, he was pretty good there. Defensively, I think he's one of the best defensive 5'8s in the comp. I just think he's a very good player, very underrated player. So I think Tom Dearden deserves the 5'8 of the year. All right, on to halfback of the year. And like James Tedesco, another player that I think could be a sniff for a Dally M. I'm going Jerome Hughes. A few options you could go with. outside of Hughesy, maybe a Nico Hines, but he hasn't been great this year. He's also been injured. Nathan Cleary, he's been amazing this year, but I do think injury will play a big part in him not getting it. Daly Cherry Evans is obviously probably the next man up for that one. Sammy Walker, another player that deserves a shout. But yeah, I think Jerome Hughes is the obvious answer for this one, and he is my halfback of the year. All right, on to the front rowers, and obviously one of these players is going to be Mitch Barnett, who was my hard-earned player. The next one, there are so many options you could go here. James Fisher-Harris, you could go with a Joe Tapine. There's plenty of options. Roosters, a few of the Roosters boys. Terrell May is a good shout as well. Yeah, Payne Haas always in the conversation. But for me, I'm actually going both the Warriors boys here. I'm going Mitch Barnett and Addin Fonua-Blake. I think both of them deserve it to be in this conversation. I think they will both lock in the Dally M prop of the year. All right, my Dally M hooker of the year. This one I've been on the fence about. I don't know which two to go with, so I'll talk about the two in a second. For me, I think that a few players that deserve a shout. Api Korisau, I don't know if he's eligible for it because he did get suspended for a few weeks, I believe, so he might not be eligible. There's obviously Damien Cook. Rabbitohs haven't been great, but he has had a pretty good year, to be fair. Reed Marnie, top of the tackle count this year. A few players there that deserve to at least be in the conversation for it. Jacob Little is another little smoky. No pun intended. Jacob Little, a little smoky. He's a smoky for it, to be honest, and I think that he could hold a few points there. But for me, I think it's got to be between Harry Grant and Reece Robson. Grant has been phenomenal all year, but I do think based off what Reece did in Origin, he probably does just nab it off Harry Grant. I think it's a two-horse race between those two, though, and I am going with Reece Robson. All right, the second rowers of the year. Oh, boy. I think this one is pretty much locked in with only two players that really should get it. A few players that deserve an honourable mention. Britton Nikora from the Sharks definitely deserves one. Haumole Olakau'atu deserves a shout. Viliami Kikau has had a really good season. Obviously, Liam Martin's always up there in the conversation. But for me, the two players that deserve this one is Ali Katoa and Angus Crichton. So obviously, Ali Katoa from the Melbourne Storm and Gus Crichton from the Roosters. They are my picks for the Dally M second rowers of the year. All right, and to wrap up the team of the year, I've gone with, obviously, and again, I've mucked up this. I've put hooker of the year. Obviously, it's the lock of the year. Again, mucking up the posts here, but it is what it is. So, my Dally M lock of the year is going to go to Isaiah Yeo, and I don't think it's close. If Keon played a full season at lock, I definitely think he could give Yeo a run for his money. But outside of that, I think Isaiah Yeo has nabbed this award, and I don't really have anybody else close to him. He's been the most consistent lock, if not player, this year. He hasn't had, I don't think he gets a 10 out of 10 game, but he's definitely 8 and 9 every single week. He is incredible, and he deserves the Dally M lock of the year. All right, so my Dally M 2024 team of the year. From the Sydney Roosters, James Tedesco. From the Penrith Panthers, Brian To'o. In the centres, I've got from the Cronulla Sharks, Jesse Ramian. And in the centres, and in the other centre from the Bulldogs, Stephen Crichton. On the other wing, from the Dragons, Zach Lomax. At 5'8", I've gone with Tom Dearden from the North Queensland Cowboys. Jerome Hughes is my halfback of the year from the Melbourne Storm. The front rowers of the year, both coming from the Warriors, Mitch Barnett and Addin Fonua-Blake. The hooker, Reece Robson. The second rowers from the Roosters, Angus Crichton, and from the Melbourne Storm, Ali Katoa. And from the Penrith Panthers, locking us all up at lock is Isaiah Yeo. All right, and finally, guys, the moment you've all been waiting for, my predicted Dally M Player of the Year, I think it is between two players. Maybe Turbo makes a run. I don't think he does though. I think there's two players that will fight to win this award. And drum roll, please. The dog barked. My 2024 Dally M Player of the Year is Jahrome Hughes. I think Jahrome, he's been incredible this year while Munster's been out. Pappy's been out for a good period. They've lost a lot of spine members this year, and Hughesy has stood up and delivered on the big stage several times to lead them to a minor premiership. So I've got to go Jahrome Hughes here. If you guys do have a different opinion, please drop it down in the comments. But Jahrome Hughes is my 2024 Dally M Player of the Year. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please hit that like button and subscribe. And as always, my friends, I will see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.